This conference will now be recorded.
So far that whatever that we have seen, all the services, everything that we were logging into the console and we were doing, as we discussed in our initial class, right? There are multiple ways that you can access AWS. So one of the ways is to log into the console and do it. Another way is to use a command line interface, or another way is to use the SDK, software development kit, AWS software development kit for certain languages. Some of 5 or 6 languages are supported, so we can access it through them also. So when you go to the corporations or organization, depending upon the role that you play, you will have to do any one of these. Suppose if you are an administrator, right, you may get access to the console. But if you are a developer, you might not get access to the console, where you may be working with AWS only through the command line interface or through SDK. Suppose if you're a Python developer, then you may be working with Boto 3, a Python SDK for AWS, right? So we will see today how to connect to AWS using a command line interface and using SDKs. That's what we are going to see today. Okay. So irrespective of whether you access through console, through CLI, command line interface, or through SDK, software development kit, everything internally, only the API calls of AWS is being called. All the services, the APIs are exposed and you call the APIs. So irrespective of what you do, you will get all the things invoked through API. That is why you can use any way to connect to your AWS. And if you would have remembered, we saw something about CloudTrail. So CloudTrail is a service where it will capture all the events that has happened through the API, whatever API that you called, how you called, from where you called, everything will get logged in there, right? So that is what we saw. So now let's get into and see how we can configure CLI from our local and how to connect. If you would have remembered, like the first or second class where we tried creating a free tier account, and when we created an IAM user, we did download one Excel sheet to your download folder, which is called credential.csv, which has the access key and secret key ID. So if you don't remember, we'll just quickly go through that and we will go ahead and see how that is being used to connect, right? So let's go to IAM service. Assume that I'm creating a new user. Login as the go to the user. I wanted to add a new user, right? And I call this as the whatever name that you want, right? You can use CLI user, right? Command line user. You remember we selected this access key, programmatic access. So enables access key ID and secret key ID for API, CLI, and SDK and other development tools. So these are all used for programmatic access, where this one is used for your console. We would have selected this for your IAM user, and what that would have done, that would have downloaded a credentials.csv file into your downloads folder. You can go ahead and check that. If you don't have, you can create a new user also. See, credential.csv file, it would have downloaded a credential.csv file. And if you open that file, again, please be very careful that this secret access key can be seen only once when you create the user. And if you don't forget to download this, if you forget to download this CSV, then you have to regenerate the user again. Okay, so this is the access key and secret key, which we will configure to talk to AWS using our AWS CLI or SDK. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go back and see how to configure our CLI. Okay. So as we talked about, developing and performing AWS tasks against AWS can be done in several ways. So you can set up your CLI or command line interface on your local computer, desktop or laptop, or you can set it up on your an EC2 machine also, right? And similarly, you can set up an SDK for your local computer, or again SDK for your EC2 machines. And we will also be using AWS instance metadata service to get the details or metadata about that EC2 instance, like what is the IP address, what are its different attributes, right? So those things we will see how to get that. So the first thing is to set up this CLI in Windows or any environment. You need to go to this link and download the CLI exe. So this is specifically for Windows, but you can go ahead and download for the other stuff also, right? You can go and download for other stuff, like here we have Windows. Okay, how to download for Windows, or you can download for Mac OS, or you can download for Linux. It's up to you, right? You can go ahead and download all these things. Once you download this, it's very simple. You just need to do a next, and you go ahead and install it. Once you have installed it, right? Once you have installed it, go to your command prompt and just say AWS --version. So if you would have downloaded the latest version, it should show like this: AWS CLI, some version, what Python runtime is associated with that, and what is the operating system. This Boto core is nothing but your SDK for Python. Okay, Boto core is nothing but your Boto 3. That's called Boto 3. So Boto 3 is nothing but your SDK for Python. So we will be using this to see how to connect through SDK. Okay, fine. Now, once you have downloaded this, how do we configure this, right? That's what we need to check. Okay, and let me also open some documentation for your command line interface. This is very, very important. Just like our Bible, you need to have this, because without this, you will not be able to run any commands. It's very difficult to remember all the commands. So it's better to always go and reference here based on your requirement. And this is for your SDK. We'll go through examples of all these things, right? So Boto 3. Okay, so again, I'm using Python here. You can use for Java, .NET, C#, then Golang, Python, and Ruby, right? These are the 6 languages that are supported, and you can go download the SDK accordingly. We will see where to download and how those programs will look like, right? But we will go one of the programs from Python, which is very easy to write. And since I'm aware of Python, I have taken this. If you are aware of Java, you can download Java and start creating. It's up to you. Okay, let's go and see how to configure this. Now, once you download your CLI and you have your access key and secret key ready, the first thing you need to do is you have to run this command called AWS configure. Okay, so you have to run AWS configure. Have that Excel sheet handy. So once you click on this AWS configure, it will ask you for the access key ID. Now I have already configured. So again, it is asking whether you want to overwrite or you want to keep the same one. So for you, it will be showing empty. Please go ahead and enter your access key ID from that Excel sheet. Similarly, your secret access key, right? That also, that's very, very important. The secret access key. Enter this. Then the default region is always picked up as US East 1. You can change whatever region that you want, but for, I think throughout the course we have been using US East 1 Northern Virginia. Just go ahead and leave this. And what are the output format you need, right? By default it is always JSON. So if you want to change any other format, you can change, but normally it is whatever the command that you run, the return will always be on the JSON, as a JSON. So this is how you configure. Now, what happens when you configure this, right? What happens when you configure this? That's what we need to see. If you go to your home directory in Windows, go to users, and whatever username you have, you will get a folder called created as .aws. Okay, .aws is a hidden folder. Click on this folder, and under this you will get a something called credentials. Okay, and go ahead and open with Notepad or whatever editor you want. See here, this is what it will get an entry here. Okay, it will get an entry saying what is your access key, what is your secret key. Okay, so this is the default profile that will be created. Now assume that I have a dev account, I have a UAT account, I have a prod account, and I have 3 different users in 3 different accounts, and I have all the access key and secret key for those 3 accounts I want to configure. How do I segregate my configuration, right? Just say AWS configure and pass a profile, create with the profile, say dev as a profile. right? Say as a dev as a profile. Now enter the access key ID for the dev profile, access key ID for the secret key ID for your dev, then region name, then format, then next account you have to do for SIT, for example, right? So like this, if you do, what will happen? You will have in the same file, you will have different credentials based upon different profiles, different profiles. So how that will be created? If you go back, if you don't specify any profile name, it will go into a default profile. If you specify a profile name, this is a profile name I did specify for some other account, right? You can see here it has created using this profile name, using this profile name, using this profile name, right? Using this profile name. There is another user. I have used this profile. I have used this profile for something else. I have used this test profile. So many things are there, right? You can go ahead and create how many accounts that you want, and you can segregate it by profile. Okay, now how do we test this? Now how do we make sure that our configuration is fine? Just to check that, let's go and create one S3 bucket, right? That's very easy. Let's go and create an S3 bucket. I'll show you how to create it through command line itself, but for now, just to make sure the configuration is correct, let's go ahead and create one bucket here. Oh, we already have some buckets. Okay, good. You already have some buckets. If you don't have a bucket, create a bucket here. Come back to your this one and go and say AWS S3 LS. So always it is AWS service name, then the command details. If you go here and check for S3, right? Click on S3, the documentation, you will get the full description of what this all will do, right? And you have different examples and different options available. See, available commands, LS is one of the command. Okay, let's go and see. I wanted to list all the buckets in my account from my command line interface, right? This is my default profile, whatever I created now. Okay, so I can see both of this one. Now suppose I wanted to check the buckets in my dev account, right? Then I have to pass my profile like this. I have to say it's my profile. I think this is my profile. Let me quickly check. Okay, this is my profile name. So if I want to check for dev account, pass the profile name. Every time when you pass the profile name, what this command line interface will do, it will go to the credential file, take the appropriate access key and secret key, and then connect to your AWS, right? So this is how you can go ahead and configure your CLI. Now, without even going to here, like what can we do, right? So we can go to this, and you can, for example, if it is S3, you can do all these things, right? You can create a bucket, you can remove a bucket. Let's try to create a bucket, right? Say AWS S3. When you say MB is make bucket. MB is make bucket. You are making a new bucket. How do we create a bucket? Whenever a bucket name is given, you cannot simply just give a name. You have to give a URI. So we spoke about this when we talked about our this one. It's called the URI. URI means, can someone say this? What is URI? Universal Resource Indicator. Whereas our URL is Universal Resource Locator, where we have it in our browser. So we have to specify URI. Always URI is, this is a URI for HTTP, right? HTTP//. Similarly for S3, the URI will be S3://. Okay, and then we have to specify URI, the name with the URI. Without the URI, it will not work. Your URL also will work only with the URI, but browser automatically puts this HTTP or HTTPS based on whatever you give. But normally in the background, when the information is sent, it will send with both URI and URL. Okay, this is mainly to distinguish the protocols and other stuff, right? So let's go and create one bucket called S3:// DC 1040. So I'm not logging into console. I'm just creating only from command line. See, when you get your bucket name back saying make bucket is successful, you will get like this. Now to check this, go ahead and check this. you have to see your third bucket as well. And if you go to the console also, you should be able to see the bucket, right? So this is some of the few things that you can do with your AWS CLI. It's not only this, right? It's there for all the services of AWS. Okay, so it doesn't matter which service. Let's see if we can create one VPC. Go to EC2, right? Go to EC2. There are so many API calls for EC2. So you can go down here and say these are all the available commands, right? You can allocate, you can attach volume, you can detach volume, you can do all those things here, right? You can go ahead and create network, create public, create route tables, create tags, right? Let's go try to create a VPC and see what happens, right? This is a VPC, okay? Create VPC, and these are all optional parameters that you have which we need to pass. There are certain things which are mandatory, right? This CIDR block is mandatory. You need to pass this. Without this, all of this will be, it will take by default, it will take all the values, but you can specify what you want to do, right? And if you go down, there is an example also how to create a VPC, right? See, easy to create VPC, give the CIDR block. Okay, you want to give any resource names, you can give this also, right? So let's take this out and go to the notepad and decode this and try to run this. Let's see what happens, right? So if you want to run multiple lines, you have to put a / like this, or if you want to run in a single line, you can go and run it in single line as well, right? So my CIDR block is this one, and then I want to add a tag. Okay, tag specification, resource type is VPC. What is the tag you want? Key is the name, and value will be my VPC. Okay, so just an example that I'm just taking it from there. And before we run this there, let's go back to our VPC console and see if we have any VPC in that name, right? So all the things can be done, everything through CLI. Okay, I have only my default VPC, nothing else is there. Nothing else is there. That's fine. Let's go and so once you create this VPC, what happens? Tag specification is not there, something we missed out. We don't have to give this, I think. Tags is also not there. Let's remove this. Just see if we can run this. We're able to create this one. So if you go back to our VPC console and go to Northern Virginia, you can see our new VPC is created, F8D5. If you go back, F8D5 is what is that is been created. So you can go through these examples to go and create a VPC, delete a VPC, and these are all the different things that you have for VPC. Okay. To create this one with dedicated this one, then this is to just create a VPC specified. This one, I don't know, this one is not working. Why is that? Did we miss something? I think it is
Maybe the key value, key name needs to be added due to that.
It could be key equal to this one, and value might be equal to this one. Let's see. Just give me a minute. I think we got this. This is specifications. There is some syntax error in that code, I believe. Okay, let's keep this and make this as 10.16.0, and let's see if we can create the. I think the tag specification is not there. Looks like tag specifications is there. Let's go on. Try this out. Okay. Unknown option. Tag specifications. The resource type is PPC. Tags equal to. Okay, we'll just come back on this, but I think this is how we have to create. I don't know what is causing this issue.
I think Chandra, we have to give the value over there.
Yeah, we are given the value. No, we have given the value. Okay, only thing I see is, you see here, this is not in double quotes, but the value is in double quotes. Okay, but this hyphen tag specifications is saying it's not the correct syntax. So something we need to check. We need to go through this full documentation to see what's exactly happening. See, it's creating this, right?
Yeah.
So is this something that we have missed? We don't know. Let's go and check that also, right? Still says tax specification only, it doesn't say tax. This one. So cider block, tax specification, resource type. Okay, this is a working code actually. I don't know why this is not working. Yeah, there is some problem here.
Maybe IP value needs to be changed because it's already existing.
No, that is not a problem. You can create a number of this one. That's not an issue. Okay, we'll come back on this, but you can go and create any resources like this, and you can describe your instances, and you can do all those things, right? So that is how you can go to this documentation, and you can check for any service like that, and you can go do, like, you want to create an EC2 machine, you want to create describe an EC2 machine, you can create a volume, create an endpoint, whatever that we have seen through console, you can do through this one. So this is one way to do. Now, this is from my local machine. Now, what happens if I go ahead and create my EC2 and see how we can configure there, right? What is the best way to configure there? We don't have any instance. Let's go and create one instance quickly. But we are learning everything through console because that is where you get used to. You will remember the things that you have clicked and what you have done. If you are doing everything through command line from the beginning, it will be very difficult for you to remember. Just keep that in mind. That's why we are seeing this in the last. Okay. I have an EC2 instance here. So let's go and try to connect to this EC2 instance. Let me try to run the same S3 command here to see if we are able to get that right. Fine. Now we did there. So this we have an EC2 machine. So I'm just trying to run AWS S3 LS. See what it says. Unable to locate credentials. You can configure credentials by running AWS configure. Okay. Now, should we really run this or not? That is what we need to see, right? Let's go back and check what we need to see. So this is what we did in our local computer. We just have the access using the access key secret key ID, but please make sure you don't share any of your access key and secret key ID with anybody because they will get the full access for your account. Okay, on EC2, we can run, as I told you, we can run the EC2 configure, but it's not secure. The reason for that is, if you do a AWS configure in EC2, which is a public machine, there will be a folder created AWS with your plain text credential there, your access key and secret key. If somebody else can hack into your public machine, then everybody will have access to your access key and secret key. So it is not right way to do this if you are using a public EC2, right? The best way to do is to always create a role and attach it to IAM, create an IAM role and attach it to the EC2. So let's go and see how to do this. So this is very insecure because you will have all your credentials open to everybody. Okay. So if the EC2 is compromised, your account also will go off. If the EC2 is shared with some other people, maybe your team members are using all same jump server, everybody will have access to your credential, right? So it's very, very difficult. So the best way to do is always create a role and attach it. So what we're going to do, we are going to create a role, then the role will have policy so that the EC2 will assume that role and it will do the job for us. Okay, IAM roles can come with policy authorizing exactly what the EC2 instance should be able to do. Then you can use profiles again without any issues, and as we did in our local, we can. Let's go to IAM. Okay, let's go and create a role. Let's create a role. So this is an AWS service. This role is going to be used by AWS service. The common use cases for the services will be EC2 and Lambda. This is where we keep creating roles. So this is a common use case, but still you have all other services you can create the role here, right? So let's go and select EC2 because this role is going to be used by EC2. Okay. What is the permission that this role needs? Say, for example, I want to access my this one, right? So Amazon S3 full access. Click on this, do a next, and give a role name. So today's date is 0903. Okay. EC2 S3 role. Okay, just give some name. Come down. This is what will get created in the trusted entity. That means this is STS's security token service, and it is going to use the assume role. What is going to use? This EC2 is going to assume this role. Okay, that is the idea. What role? Once it's assumed the role, it will gain this access, whatever policy is attached. Let's go and create a role. And once you create a role, you have to attach this role to the EC2. There are two ways of attaching roles to EC2. One is while creating the machine itself, right? While creating the machine, you have an option to go and attach the policy. Go to these, go to the end, go to the advanced settings, come down, and you see here it's called IAM instance profile. So you can go and attach roles from here itself. Or suppose you would have already created the machine, go to select the machine, go to actions, security, and say modify IAM role. Again, keep in mind, at any point of time for any service, only one role can be attached. The role can have n number of policies, but only one role can be attached at any point of time. So you need to attach the policies accordingly. So this is the role that we created, 0903 EC2 S3 role. Just go ahead and put this, right? Update the IAM role. Once you update the IAM role, now go ahead and check the same command. Just see what happens. If your roles are attached correctly, you will be able to access this one. Okay. Now, can I do something from here? Yes, you can do, right? AWS S3, I want to remove the bucket. MB is make bucket. RB is remove the bucket. So whenever you pass the bucket name, it should be with the URI, right? You've already removed the bucket. Go ahead and see here. You will see only the two buckets. So this is how you have to configure for your EC2. Okay. Let's move on. Any questions, guys, here so far? Okay. So let's talk about instance metadata. So already we have seen something called user data. So whenever we launch any machine, we can go and bootstrap the script using the user data, right? We pass like for example in the launch instance command, when you go down to the end, go to the advanced details and go all the way around. Here you can see user data. Here is where we will put our bootstrapping script. If it is Linux, we will put a shell script. If it is a Windows, we will put a PowerShell. So when the system initializes and comes up, it will run these commands or instructions, whatever you are given. This is called user data. Similarly, for EC2, we have something called instance metadata. Okay, instance metadata. Instance normally a metadata is nothing but a data about the data, right? Data about the data. Suppose if you are creating a Word document in your Windows file, what you will see? You will see the author, last modified, size. These are all metadata for that document, right? What is inside the document is the content that you type, but the information that is there outside, like for example, when it was modified, what is the size, who created it, all those things will be, right, your metadata. So it's a data about your data. So this AWS EC2 instance metadata is powerful, but nobody uses this, right? But if you are doing some automations and all, I would recommend you to use this, right? So this is basically allow you to kind of read the metadata of your EC2 instances. The URL used is this one. This will never change. HTTP 169.254, 169.254, latest metadata. Sometime in the exam, you may be given 4 URLs and asked which one is the correct one. So you have to mention the correct one here. Okay. So you can retrieve all the information. Let's go and see. But this can be run only inside an EC2. You cannot run outside the EC2. Okay. Please keep that in mind. Now we already have an EC2. So let's go and see if we can run something in that EC2. So I want to get the metadata of this EC2 instance. Okay. So what you will do? You will go and use this, but you cannot use it directly. Just say curl, right? When you do a curl, it will go and list all the things that are available. Now, suppose in your automation, you are writing a shell script. So you want the host name of this machine for some purpose, right? Just go and take host name and pass the output to the automation script that whatever you're writing. See here, this is the host name. So I can get the metadata of this particular machine, all the data about this particular machine. So these are all the metadata that I can get: host name, metrics, network profile, public host name, public IPv4 address, all the things that are there you can get for here in this one, around like 64 or 50 or 60 attributes are there you can get for all those attributes, right? So you can use this in your shell script or PowerShell to get the values dynamically. When you're running any shell script here, you can do that, right? This is the best way to do. So what you will do, you will do a curl of hostname, for example, hostname, and then you will pass it to the your command or something, and then you can start pushing it from there. Okay, this is the way that you have to access your metadata. So we have just touched the surface, we were just scratching the surface for your command line interface, but this is how you need to do. So you can go through all this documentation, official documentation, and you can go do whatever you wanted to do, right? For any service, it's not only for EC2, it's not only for this one, whatever that we have seen so far, right? You can go and say, for example, we saw CloudTrail. See the CloudTrail. Last class we saw CloudTrail, CloudWatch, and CloudConfig, and these are all the things that what you can do, right? You can create a trial. How do we create a trial? This is how you need to create a trial. Give a trial name, and the S3 bucket value. Well, the trial will be stored. Just go back to the down. You will have some examples also, right? To create a trial. See, to create a trial, whether it is a multi-region or not, you can say all those things, right? So this is how you can go ahead and create any service, and you can interact with any service without even logging into the console. This is one way. The other way that we have is using the SDKs. There are a lot of SDKs we have. So one such SDK is Boto 3, which is for Python. So we'll just go through this to see what is there. But again, make sure to run this, you need to have the Boto 3 installed and also your Python also installed. Similarly for Java, you may have something. Okay. So here again, the same thing, right? For all the services you have here, everything. Like for example, say if I want IAM, right? This is my IAM. So you can go to IAM and you can start pulling users and all those things. So we'll just see one example of how to write some code, Python code for using Boto 3 and get some users from IAM, right? Let's go and check those some of the codes that I already have. And this is up to you, right? If you want, you can write. If you are familiar with whatever language, you can go and write it there. So we can see the Python Boto 3. Let's go. Say for example, I want to get a list of all the IAM users, right? See what I've done. This is a Python program. See here, IAM list, users list, custom session.py. So import Boto 3, then create a session out of Boto 3. And when you're creating a session, you need to pass a profile name. This is the profile name which carries my secret key and access key ID. If you don't pass like this profile name, what will happen? You have to hard code your access key and secret key, and when you check in this into public repository like GitHub or GitLab, then your account will be blocked and everybody will be having access to your credentials. So it's always better to use your profile name. And then out of the session, open the IAM console, and then these are the methods that are there in the users.all is a method. So for each user in IAM console.users.all, print each user. So this program specifically will print all the users that are created in IAM, right? Now, this is the one that will, if you are familiar with Python, you should be doing this, right? So what we have done here, we have imported Boto 3, we have imported date time, and I was trying to pass some time here. Okay, so what you can do, you can go and create a session, open EC2, and then describe all the instances. EC2 describe all instances, one of the methods that we have. Let's go and see for EC2. EC2. go to instance. Okay, go to instances and you can see all the available methods. So if you go back down, you can see here there is a describe instances, right? There is a describe instances. You can go take that and you can put it here. So it will describe the instances, and what will happen once you describe the instance, that will come as a JSON file. Then you need to loop through those JSON file and go and print all your stuff here, right? So let's go and see how to run this. So to run this, we need to have Python installed in our this one. So let's go to Python, go to 3, and I just go and say Python 3. I want to run IAM users list session custom.py. Now what it will do, just like our CLI, it will use the profile name, go to the credential, take my access key, secret key ID, log in to create the session, and take the things information that we have asked it to take, right? On my machine it will be a little bit slower, so you might be getting this faster. Okay, see, I have only one user in IAM. Just to verify, go back to the IAM and you should be able to see only one user. Go to the user. See, I have only one user and that is getting printed here. If you have multiple users, it will print all the users here. So this is how you can do. You can also list the EC2 IDs. Okay, there will be some error thrown in date. Don't worry about that, but still we will be able to see our details here, right? So we can see what is the instance ID, instance type, when it was created, right? So today we created it, and this is the instance ID which says 45.2a, right? 45.2a. See here, 45.2a. So this is how you can use your Boto 3. This is your SDK for Python. Okay. Similarly, you also have SDKs for everything, right? Java, Ruby, Golang, right? Say Java, then suppose you just go here using SDK Java, the official documentation page where you can go and select if you know Java. Now this is the code where Java normally they used to import everything, and you write a class or a method and then access your this one. So this is how you do using Java SDK. Now suppose you wanted to see how to do for a .NET, right? This is for your .NET, right? If you are familiar with .NET, then you should be able to understand what is that, right? So you should be able to understand that. You can go and check those and then you can do. Okay, and you can also use the go back and check for Ruby, Golang, and everything, right? If you know Ruby, you can use Ruby. You have SDK for Ruby. You can download that SDK. Go to the all the this one, and you'll get. Okay, this is the Ruby code to list all your bucket. If you are familiar in Ruby, you can write this. Similarly for Python, similarly for Golang, right? So all these are all languages that are supported, and you have different SDKs. Now I'll show you how and where you get this, where you'll be using this, right? Suppose you have a web page that is given to the user to upload something to S3, right? So you write a code behind the scene whenever they upload a photo or picture. You write the code either in Java or Ruby or Python and call that, and that will get fetch the object from the user and upload it to S3. Okay, so this is how you would be using it in this one. Okay. Any questions on this, guys? So we talked about CLI and we talked about how to set up the CLI, how to access the CLI, and how we can access it through SDKs. I have used Python because I'm aware of Python, but if you are familiar with Java, .NET or Lang or Ruby, then you can go ahead and try with those SDKs. It's up to you. Okay, this is what we saw. The next thing that we are going to see is only some serverless functions, right? Serverless functions. So serverless functions, when we say serverless means you don't have to manage the servers. The server is managed for you by AWS. Okay. So whenever we talk about serverless, we immediately think about Lambda. A Lambda is a function, Lambda is a service which is used to run function as a code. You can write function as a code. So let's go and see. So serverless is a new term or new paradigm or new buzzword in which the developers don't have to manage servers anymore. They just deploy the codes or functions. Initially, serverless was called as FAS, function as service. Okay, now they have made it as serverless because there are many servers, many services which are serverless. Like for S3, S3 is serverless, right? Your S3 is a serverless. Then we will see other services tomorrow. DynamoDB, SNS and SQS, they are also serverless. So serverless was initially started for Lambda, but now it includes so many things like database and other things, right? Aurora, we saw about Aurora serverless and all those things, right? So serverless doesn't mean there are no servers, but you don't get to manage those things. Everything is managed by AWS for you. So some of the serverless services we have: AWS Lambda, Step Functions, DynamoDB, Cognito, Gateway, S3, Kinesis, Aurora serverless. These are all some of the services which are serverless services in AWS. So why we need to use Lambda, when we need to use AWS, we need to know. EC2 we need to know. So EC2 is nothing but your virtual servers in the cloud. They are limited by RAM and CPU. So again, it depends upon the instance type that you select. If you select a T2 micro, you will get one CPU, one GB of RAM. If you select a bigger system, you will get bigger. So based on that, it will vary. And then you have to continuously run your EC2 because suppose if there is a program or there is some feature that will be executed by the user, we don't know when, right? Any 24 hours. So what will happen? You have to make sure your EC2 is running all 24 hours, even though the client might invoke only once in a day, right? For auto scaling, you need to go and intervene, you need to go and configure and say based on this, you bring all these things, right? That's what you need to say. But whereas in Lambda, virtual functions, there are no servers to manage. It is limited by time. So whenever you want to run any function or any piece of code which can execute within 15 minutes, keep this in mind, within 15 minutes. So it is recommended to go for Lambda because they run on demand and the scaling is automated. So even though your Lambda function is created and ideal there for 24 hours, you run it for only 2 minutes, you pay only for 2 minutes. That's the advantage of this Lambda. Okay, so again, they are only short executions, right? Like 15 minutes max, not more than that. So that means if your workload, if your requirement is to run something within 10 minutes, better to use Lambda than EC2. If you want to run your applications which will execute more than 15 minutes or 20 minutes, go for EC2. So benefits of Lambda: the easy pricing, pay per request and compute time. You have a free tier of 100,000, 1 lakh, more than 10 lakhs. This one you have Lambda request and 400,000 GBs of compute time. So we will be very well within the free tier, and after free tier, you will get charged accordingly. So this Lambda is integrated with many other AWS services. It is integrated with many programming languages. You can write your Lambda code in Python, Node.js, Golang, Java, .NET, right? All those things we will see how that. You can easily monitor this through your CloudWatch service, and you can get more resources per function. So you have you can only increase your memory. So memory is like 128 MB to 10 GB of RAM. You will get it. So you can increase by 64 MB. Increments of 64 MB. You can keep increasing. When you increase the RAM, it will also in background increase the CPU power and network, and hence you will pay more. Okay, so you have to take a look at the pricing for this. These are the languages that are supported: Node.js, Python, Java, C#, Golang, and C#. C# we have two. One is .NET Core, another is PowerShell. We will just see some examples with Python. So these are some of the services that will get integrated with a Lambda function. So one of the common use cases or popular use cases out there in the net, if you go and search, this will be this one. Completely serverless, right? Completely serverless. Your S3 doesn't need any server. Your Lambda doesn't need any server. and DynamoDB is a NoSQL database, which we will see tomorrow. That is our cloud serverless. So what will happen when somebody uploads an image, very big image in your S3 bucket, a Lambda function will be triggered and it will convert the bigger image to a thumbnail, and the thumbnail will be stored into another S3 bucket. All the metadata about the image will be stored in the DynamoDB, and you will show this thumbnail in the web page. Whenever someone clicks on the thumbnail, you will read the original image from the original S3 bucket. So this is one of the use case that you can have. So this Lambda functions, right? It's mainly used wherever we have this event-driven architectures. So something can trigger. So some events will trigger, and if something else want to trigger a Lambda function, we want to do some processing, we can do. Yeah, that's what we are going to see today. Okay, and you can also use CloudWatch events to trigger a Lambda function and make it as a cron job, right? You can say every 1 hour you run this. So what are some of the use cases that you can use Lambda? Say, for example, you want to take a backup of your application or something, or some folder or something you want to take, you can go and do like this, right? So some of the Lambda configurations, timeout, as I told you, default is 3 seconds and max is 900 seconds, which is 15 minutes. You can create some environment variables, and those environment variables cannot exceed 4 KB. Okay, and memory allocation is from 128 MB minimum to 1000, that is 10 GB, right? 10,000 to 40 MB is 10 GB. You can deploy within your VPC and assign security groups, so your Lambda function will be accessible only within your AWS VPC. You need to have an IAM execution rule which must be attached to the Lambda function. Otherwise, the Lambda function will not work, because whenever you call any Lambda, it automatically tries to write the log files into CloudWatch. So it has to have an entry to write it to CloudWatch. Some of the limits we have, as I told you, memory allocation is the limit, and you can only increment by 64 MB. Suppose if you wanted to increase from 128 to 130, you cannot do that. You have to add a 64 MB. So it can only increment by 64 MB. Maximum execution time 15 minutes, and then you also get a disk capacity of 512 MB, where you can put some dependency codes and all those things. And you also have a concurrency limit of 1000. That means you can, at any given point of time, you can have 1000 Lambda executing concurrently, right? Not more than that. So you can deploy your function, your Java file or whatever file it is, you can zip them. It can be maximum only 50 MB. If it is uncompressed, you can have core plus dependencies of 250 MB. And you can use the temp directory on the top here to load any other files that you want to use using startup. As I told you, the size of the environment variable can only be 4 KB to the maximum. If you would have remembered, we talked about CloudFront, right? CloudFront to like distribute the content or cache the content to our edge location. So before the user sends something to our CloudFront distribution, and this is called viewer request, we can write some Lambda function here to do some processing. And before it reaches the origin, you can put some Lambda function here, and vice versa, right? So that is called Lambda at edge, because you are executing the Lambda at the edge location. So it is called Lambda at edge. So these are the 4 points where you can put your Lambda to do some further processing, right? And this is a example information where you have an HTML website, user visits the website, you get some requests, you cache the response and write a Lambda function which will go and query the data from somewhere and take it and give it back to the user. So whenever you have a Lambda function placed in any of these 4 places, okay, this is called a Lambda at edge. Okay, some of the Lambda at edge use cases, you can have dynamic website, web application, or you can put some bot mitigation, you can do some real-time image transformations, tracking analytics, authentication, authorization. So all those things can be used using a Lambda function. Now let's get into the console and see what is a Lambda function, how do we create it, right? Let's go to the service and select Lambda. Run code without thinking about servers, that is a caption. that these guys have tagline. Okay, let's go and see how to do this. Okay, so this is the dashboard that you have, where you have how many Lambda functions, what is the total code storage you have up to 75 GB, and then full account concurrency we have 1000, and it is unreserved account concurrency. That means if you have 2 or 3 Lambda functions running, all the 3 will be using this 1000. I mean, it will share from here and it will run concurrency based upon your invocation. Okay, so there is, if when we say there is unreserved, there is something called reserved also, right? We can reserve it for one particular process to have 200 concurrency always, right? So that your function is faster depending upon your requirement. So these are all some of the metrics that you can see whenever you execute a function, and these metrics comes from CloudWatch logs. Okay, let's go and create a function. So there are 4 ways you can create a function. You can author from scratch, or you can use a blueprint. There are some code is there for you. Again, you need to check what it is written. It might be written in Python or Node.js. Okay, these are all some sample codes. If you want, you can take a look. If you are using a Docker, then you can use a Docker container image. If you are having it an image, you can select the image here, or you can also go to a browserless app repository and see all these things, right? See here, hello world Python 3, and this is like written in some other languages. You can go through Node.js and all those things, right? Especially the write it in Node.js and Python mostly because those runtimes, they take very less time to initialize and execute. Whereas if you write Java and other programming languages like .NET, you need some time for the Lambda to do all the imports and stuff, right? So it's always better to wisely select the language there. For now, for this exercise, we will go ahead with author from scratch, and let's give a function name, and I call this as a test function. Can be any name, right? And these are all the runtimes I told you, right? It will support .NET 6, .NET Core, Go, Java, Node.js, Python, and Ruby, right? So it will be supporting all these languages, and these are all the older versions of those languages, right? So we'll go with Python. Okay, and here by default there will be a role created with your function name here. See, test function role some random characters, it will automatically create so that you can upload logs to CloudWatch. Without this, you cannot run your Lambda function. Okay, let's go and create this function. Then we will go and see each and every. If you know Python, you can use Boto 3, and you can do a lot of use cases in this. Okay, let me quickly create a bucket. I want to show you how we can trigger Lambda function as well. Okay. Okay, this is a test function. You see a visual kind of editor here. Okay, this is a test function. Okay, when you scroll down, you have a small text editor here. You have a small text editor. You get a boilerplate code based upon the runtime that you have selected. This is a Python, so you get it as a Python. If you are writing it as a Node, you may get a boilerplate for Node, similarly, and all those things, right? Now, suppose if you wanted to have your own code and application, you can upload as a zip, or you can store that in the S3 location and you can take it from there. Okay, so this is what we have. What we are going to do, we are simply just going to delete this and go ahead and just print the event that are being passed from there. Once you make any changes, you need to deploy this, otherwise it will not work. Okay, it will not work. Okay, let's keep this. We are not going to execute this. Let's just keep it. Let's go to this configuration here and just see what are the things that we have. So on the general configuration is we have, these are all the default storage we have, 512 MB, and default timeout is always minimum 3 seconds. And if you go and edit, you can go and change this to 15 minutes maximum. Okay, and the roles that is being used and all those things are here in the general configuration. Triggers, right? We will talk about triggers. Before we talk about triggers, let's go try to test our code and come back and see what happens. Then we will go and start triggering, going to other things, right? So to test, go and click on test. You can create a test event for your code to execute. You can pass some payloads. Okay, you can create a test event, put some event and see how this works, right? So this is the event that I'm passing. Whatever is here, it will get printed, right? Let it be anything, right? We can give anything that we want, right? Just a test case, just kind of a test case, right? Okay, just go ahead and save this. Once you save this, you can test this. Once you test this, you can see the execution results here. The response is null because we don't have any written code. We simply printed the event, whatever is being passed here, right? This is what we have done, right? Now, what will happen when we run this, right? Normally, whenever we run this, a CloudWatch event will be triggered. And if you go back to the CloudWatch, you will be able to see the logs getting created there. Go to CloudWatch and automatically a log group will be created on those function name. See here, test function, click on that, click on the stream and see here, this is what the value that we have printed. And see how much time it took. It took 1.18 milliseconds and we are billed for 2 milliseconds. That means always in nearest rounded milliseconds. And the memory size, that is by default set is 128 MB, but my function used only 36 MB. Okay, init duration is where your Lambda function need to create the server in the background. So it has took 1.8.53 milliseconds to start. Okay, this is how you need to interpret. Now let's go back to our this one and go to the configuration. So we have seen this general configuration. We have seen the, let's come to trigger back. Then go to the permissions. This is the role that is created. You want to check what it has created. You can go to the role directly and you can open that role and go and see what permissions it has added. Just for you to know, right? So this is the policy that it has added. When you double click here, all that it has done is it has just put an allow statement to allow to write to the CloudWatch logs, and for which principal, for which resource this test function from Lambda will be writing to this log. That's all. Go to trusted relationship. See, it has assumed the role. What will assume the role? The Lambda will assume the role, just like what we saw with S3 and EC2, right? So this is what has been created by here. So you can go and take a look at and change all the policies if you want, right? So let's talk about triggers, then we'll come back, right? Because that is one thing. Now we can add a trigger. That means what? How can this Lambda function be triggered? There are multiple ways to add a trigger. Go and add a trigger. There are a lot of triggers like this. Any other services from AWS can trigger a Lambda event, right? So and we also have a partner, like all these applications like Bitbucket, Datadog, right? All these guys can trigger an event. You have to configure in such a way that whenever something happens in Datadog, it will trigger an Lambda function which will do something for you. Okay. For now, since we have S3, let's go and create S3 as our trigger. You have to select your bucket. This is my bucket. And what is the trigger time, event time? All object create events. Whenever I put new objects, it has to trigger this Lambda. Do you want to specifically say for any particular folder or any particular suffix? You can give it here. And very important, just make sure your Lambda does not keep invocating the same events again and again. I mean, if you want to write some logs, don't put it into the same bucket, because what will happen again, it will trigger the Lambda. Again, it will trigger the Lambda. So it will go recursively. So please make sure it is not recursive. There is no recursive invocation. Go and create this. See what happens. It has already created trigger. That means what we are trying to say here, whenever I go and upload something in this bucket, it should get triggered. That's what the meaning is. Like, let's go and see if that really works, right? We'll add some file here. Let's go to desktop and see what we have. Okay. as something called enable. Okay, let's put this enable.text, upload. And how do I know my, how do I check whether my Lambda function has been triggered or not? Just go to the CloudWatch, go back to this one and refresh here. Open this guy. You can see here the Lambda has been triggered and we are having our event here. See here, this is the event source is from S3, event name is object created put. That means I am putting a new object. I've just uploaded a new object. And then what happens? Then you come back down and it says the bucket name, who is the principal ID, and my ARN for the bucket, and this is my object that I have uploaded, right? So what happened? It's an event-driven architecture. So whenever I delete something, whenever I create something, whenever I do something, you trigger this function. That function need to do some processing. For now, as an example, we are just printing the event. That's all. The event is passed as a JSON file. This is on the your triggers. We talked about permission, destination. Similarly, like triggers, you can also pass to the destination. Right? After the processing is complete, you can pass the event to the destination. The destination can be anything, right? So when you click on destination, there are two things. Whether you want to asynchronously invocate, start the invocation, or you want to stream the invocation. When you select asynchronous invocation, once that job is done, it will just go and pass it to another destination, but it will not wait for whether it is passed or failed, right? So that is asynchronous. So for asynchronous, you have two conditions, whether you want to invoke on failure or on success. Okay, if your current Lambda is success, then you go and invoke. Invoke what? You can only invoke these things: SNS topic, SQSQ, which we will see tomorrow, and then another Lambda function, any other event from the event bridge, CloudWatch event bridge, right? So you can go and select anything from here. So what we will do, we will create another Lambda function and make it as a destination. Guys, for all the automations, wherever you go in AWS, without Lambda, there is no automation in your company. Okay. I say destination function. I'll keep this guy again in this same Python and go and do a create function. So whenever you're doing a create function, it has to build the runtime for you. That's why it will take some time. Come back to the code and just go do a print of your event, just for us to make sure. Print event, deploy these changes. Whenever you change, you need to deploy these changes. Let it be as it is. Now go back to destination and refresh here and say asynchronous invocation on successful of my current Lambda. Go and select a, go and pass this function to the destination function and say save it. Now what should happen? See here, it's a full cycle now. So when I upload something to my S3, it will trigger this Lambda. This Lambda will do some processing and it will, based upon it is successful, it will pass the processor event to the destination, which is another Lambda, which will normally print. That's all, nothing it will do. So this is a complete cycle. Let's go and see how this works now. So I'm going to upload another image or whatever is there, right? I'm going to just put Ansible lab setup, right? Just put this Ansible lab setup and upload, and The only way that we can know whether it has been done or not, just go to the log group, refresh here, just wait for a minute. So our first function should run and it should invoke the next one. See here, it has already invoked the destination function. Now you get into the destination function, you will see a log stream here, and go here and copy this guy entirely and just put it here. Now see what happens, right? There are two requests that are coming from both, right? So this particular event, okay, this particular event is coming from test function, the first one, right? And this is from your second one. This is from your second one, and whatever we have passed from there, it has been passed here, and this is what we have it in our destination, this one. So this is the way that you can trigger a function and you can pass your destination to the some other functions, or you can invoke a stream and pass it to some Elasticsearch or some other stream for real-time analytics. Okay, so this is on the destination. So there is something called function URL. This is a new feature that was added recently, most recently. So whenever we write something, right, it was very difficult for us to test this in the browser. We have to write some code to test it. So what they have done, they have created they give an option to generate a URL so you can access it from the browser. Let's go and try that, right? We'll create a function, and the authentication type, if it is none, it will be public. Okay, it will be public. Make it none, and this is what you will get the policy attached. Save this and you will get a URL. So click this URL, it will open in a browser and see whatever it will return, right? It will return null, whatever it will return, you can go and give it there and it will return accordingly. Since we are writing this one for your the test function, you are not seeing anything, but if you go for the destination function, then you should be able to see, because we have a return statement there, correct? So that is how you can go ahead and do this. Or you can also, just to make sure, you can return this, right? You can return this code, go back to this one, go to the code and put this guy here, deploy this change, and now go back to the destination function, this one, and do this. See here, when you have a return statement, it will return the things there for you. Okay, so this is what your function URL will do. Okay, this way we don't have to write some other program or wait for something to go ahead and test this Lambda function. Okay, next is the environment variables. If you want to pass any environment variable, you can add environment variable. It's a key value pair. Like for example, if my environment is dev, right? So you can get this value. If my environment, the current execution environment value is dev, then do this. If it is prod, do this, right? So you can get those values, and this can be only maximum of 4 KB, not more than that. Tags are optional. You can add tags, and you can also attach a VPC. When you attach a VPC, then you need to go ahead and attach your security group and everything, and this will be accessible. This function can be accessible only within the VPC, not outside the VPC. Monitoring and operations, all the things that we have already enabled, the logging and everything, that will get monitored from the CloudWatch. Now concurrency, when we talked about concurrency, we have 1000 unreserved concurrency, and you can go and add more concurrency. This is unreserved concurrency for you. So depending upon your functions that you have, you can add your concurrency. Asynchronous invocation, what will happen if some event is trying to trigger this Lambda, then you can say, how suppose this is failing or it's not able to invoke the Lambda, it will retry for two times, and then if it is not able to still do that, then it will go ahead and do that. Go ahead and put it in the dead letter queue, which we will see tomorrow what is a queue and how to create a dead letter queue. Okay, it will go and put it there. Now what is this one? The event will be in the queue for 6 hours maximum. This is the default type. You can go and change this. Code signing. You have written a code here, so you don't want anyone to change the code. You can go and create a code signer, and that will be like, it's kind of like digital sign, right? You can sign that code, and there will be a trusted person assigned to that code. Nobody else can go and change the code in the console here. It's called code signing. Then database proxies. Suppose if your Lambda function is talking to a database, but you have a proxy in between the database. I think we saw this when we talked about database. So how this happens is, this is your user or your application, and this is your database. So normally when everything is happening in database, the database may suffer a huge load. So what we will do, we will put a proxy in between your database and user. So all the things are cached in the proxy, and user will always talk to proxy. The proxy will talk to database. Okay, so if you have this kind of proxy, then you can include your proxy in your, you can configure for the proxy here. Sorry, you can configure the database proxy, you can add the proxies. So what will happen, your Lambda function will not talk to the DynamoDB or the DB, but it will talk to the proxy. If you have elastic file system that is being connected to other EC2 and you have your code there, you can add your file systems here. And this is called state machine, nothing but your step functions. Okay, so you have a state machine where you can run your code and you can invoke your state function, and each and every step of the state function can invoke a Lambda function. We can invoke a Lambda function, right? So these are all some of the options that we have. So we saw this code. This is where you write the test event, and this is the monitoring place where you can see it in CloudWatch. This is the gist of what is there in the CloudWatch, but you can go and view the entire logs in the CloudWatch. Go and see the entire logs in the CloudWatch. Okay. So then you have alias. You can create an alias for your function, or you can also create a new version out of the existing version. So for example, this can be a v1.0, and you can create another code, or you can create another version and change the code. That will be v1.1. So you can run 1.0 and 1.1 based upon your requirement, right? So that is what your Lambda function, the entire stuff on your Lambda function is, and these are all the things that you have. Apart from that, we saw this, right? The code signing configurations, and then layers. We didn't talk about layers. The layers are nothing but, if you see here, let's go to this function, say test function. Layers, it says 0, which means these are all some of the dependencies that you can load in the layers. So when this function starts, it will take all the dependencies from your layers, right? You can add your layers and you can go and put it there, but there is some limitation for that also, right? This is what we say, if you add layers here, you had some package size and all, there are some minimum and maximum, you need to go and kind of do that. You can add a layer, what layer you want to add. It's a Python layer, AWS layer, or it's a custom layer, or you have something else, you can go and create it here. So if it's an AWS layer, you can go and select this, right? I want a wrapper on my Python, right? For Lambda Insights extension, I want to add this extension, and what this is this one. Want your custom layers, then you go and choose your custom layers. If you have any, go and add your custom layers. So that way, suppose if I say Lambda Insights extension, then you can use that Insight extension in your function code here, right? So mostly these are all things that will be used by AWS developers, right? But still you need to know what is a Lambda function, how do we do all these things, right? So this is very big topic actually. As such, Lambda itself is a separate course, okay, but you just have a overview of what is this and how to execute this. While we sit for this particular Lambda alone separately, we will be doing each and everything use case going one by one, and what it will do, how it will do, right? Now there is another way also, like we talked about CloudWatch. Go to CloudWatch events. You can write rules in the CloudWatch event to trigger a Lambda function, right? That's what we saw, and you can do that also, right? You already have your Lambda function. You can create a rule. So I say my rule name is R1. It can be anything. Okay, you run with an event pattern. Say next. Event pattern. It's an AWS service. What is the service? I want to say, for example, EC2. What in EC2? The event type is my state change, instance state change notification. Which one? Whenever somebody terminates my machine, for any instance or all instance, it's up to you. You can go and put the instance ID here. or let's do one thing. Since we have this one, okay, we have only one instance for any instance. Okay, terminate. Select a target type. What is the target type that you want? I want to call a Lambda. I want to call a Lambda function. Which function I wanted to call? I want to call a test function. This test function is already connected with our destination function as well, right? So let's say next. Add tags you want. Go and review here what I'm doing. Whenever I am shutting down my machine, it will trigger this Lambda function. So inside this Lambda function, you can go and write whatever you want, right? Let's go and create this rule. Just creating this rule will not be suffice. We have to invoke this rule. So this rule will get invoked only whenever that event happens. So what we will do, we are going to terminate this machine and see what is happening, right? Again, keep in mind, no one service in AWS can do everything. So you should know multiple services and you should know what are those services are doing and how do we kind of work with different services to give different solutions, right? Go to instance state and do a terminate. I've terminated this. Okay, it's still shutting down. Still, it's not a terminated. Only when the state goes to terminated, that guy will get invoked. Okay, let it be here. So meanwhile, what we will do, I want to get into the, this is my test function. Okay, this is my test function. Go monitor here and go to view the logs in the CloudWatch and see if this is getting triggered correctly. Still it's shutting down, so this might not have get triggered. Now it might have got triggered, but we will need to go and validate this. Go to the log group. Again, it doesn't matter whether you go to the destination or test function, because anyway, once that's successfully done, it will get into that, right? Go to the latest one, 826. This is the stream. Go here and copy this and see whether it is triggered correctly using the event. That's why I told you it's an event-driven architecture. See here, state change notification, and this is my account, and this is a timestamp, and this is my instance ID, whatever I terminated. When it went to state terminated, it automatically triggered that Lambda. Now this event is printed from the Lambda. Now if you go back to this function, the destination function, this would also be triggered because we have added this as a destination. Now go back on top of this, copy here. See here what has happened. The payload has come from here. This is the full payload that has passed from there to here. See here. And what is that status code that we have? Here we have allow from Lambda. It has returned that also. Whatever we have the return statement. So response context is what? What is the response payload? Everything is here. So now you can see how that event-driven architecture works. So when I upload something to S3, it is getting triggered. So similarly, when I can go and write an event-based trigger also calling the Lambda. So these are all some of the use cases that you can try. Very important. Please keep in mind, whenever you go, you can add multiple triggers. See here, already there are 2 triggers now. We have added the trigger there for this Lambda, so it is already added here. Event bridge and your S3 both are added as trigger, and still there are a lot more triggers. You can use Alexa. I hope you know Alexa, right? So you can use Alexa as a trigger, and you can give all your Alexa related details. Then it will, when you talk through Alexa invoke something, right? You would have trained already to invoke that. So invoke something, you say, okay, terminate my instance. What it will do, it will terminate the instance and it will go and invoke this function. Okay, so that you can do in Alexa, right? And there are some other services like this where you can have Apache, Kafka, right? Then API gateway, load balancer. Your load balancer can also be a trigger. So your load balancer also can trigger. So suppose you have a load balancer, what is the listener protocol, what is the host, what is the path, everything you can give, it will go and trigger that there also, right? So a lot of things that we can do, right? IoT, CloudFront, CloudWatch logs, that's what we saw. Code commit, DynamoDB, Event Bridge. Event Bridge is what it got added now. And then Kinesis. Then these are all AWS related. These are all non-AWS related. Say Datadog. Datadog is an observability tool or a monitoring tool that you can go and add. Before this, you need to make sure you go to Datadog and configure with AWS. Okay. So whenever some event happens in Datadog, it will trigger this one. So this is mainly used for your event-driven architectures and writing so many use cases. It's not only this, it's not limited to only what I showed you. This is just we are simply just scratching the surface. Okay, there's a lot to it, but if you're really interested, please go through this. This will be more interesting for you. You can see a lot of codes, lot of examples, lot of things that you can do, right? So you can go write all your codes here, and you can also import your Boto 3, everything inside your code here. Everything can be done here. Okay, you can import your code Boto 3 and everything you can do it here. Okay, so this is how your Lambda function works. Any questions here, guys? Very important, please make sure you clean up your Lambda. Every Lambda invocation, of course, it comes from the free tier, but all other services, when included with this, might get charged. So it's always better to make sure we delete all the resources that we have created. Okay. While I'm cleaning up, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. So you can test your Lambda with your free tier account. Don't worry, nothing will happen. You can go ahead and any questions, guys? Anyone? Just let me know while we just go ahead and clean up all these things, right? Delete. If you don't want to delete like this, right? Just go and say AWS S3 LS and go ahead and delete it from here. You can remove it from here also, right? Just say AWS S3 remove bucket and say S3 : / your bucket name. It will go and remove the bucket. RB is remove bucket. Okay, and go and add the all other stuff that you have. Okay.
So we can delete one by one only, no? We can't delete all together.
No, you cannot.
Okay.
You cannot delete all together. You can only delete. That's why command lines are always a single line, single command that you can do. So if you want to delete everything, you need to write a shell script or PowerShell to call this recursively and passing the take this from ls and loop it through and call this command and pass the variable here. Okay. That's all. Like the more on the programming people, right? So they will be more interested in all those things. But this is how you can do from the command line. Okay. The problem with that is that we have we will need to make sure the buckets are empty and everything. So all the buckets are gone. So go back down here and refresh this. It's all gone. Okay. So that is gone. The event bridge, go back and remove your rule, because for each and every rule that you kind of write, then you will need to kind of pay for this, right? And accidentally you kind of keep creating some this is a managed rule. Please don't get it created. Only custom rules you can go and have it. Event bridge is done. Go to the function code here, go to the functions and select one by one function and go and delete it. And you have to put delete. It will also delete all the roles that are created by default. Okay, so we are done here. Please make sure you go to the log groups and delete your log groups, because these log groups will not be deleted by default. We have to go and delete it. Okay, what else did we do? I think we have done with this. And I think we did create one VPC, which we need to go and delete it, right? You go here, you will see everything should be clean. Okay, as such, Lambda itself is a separate course. Okay, that will go for around 8 hours. Each and every concept, it will go for 8 hours. But for your exam and for an interview, whatever that we saw is more than sufficient. So you don't have to worry. But I would recommend you to please go ahead and try this once, right? Otherwise, you will not know exactly that particular flavor, what is actually happening there. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult for you. Something was in Mumbai. Just trying to find out. Okay, fine. I think we are done with this one, the roles that we created and all those things. And that is also gone. Here we have just configured with our local. That is not an issue. So this is what we have for today. Any questions that you guys have? So just keep in mind, whenever you are given a question or when you are given a problem saying that you have a piece of code that needs to run for 35 minutes, right? There are two ways you can decide whether you want to go to EC2 or Lambda. Suppose if your execution takes 35 minutes or 40 minutes, can I break that 40 minutes into two different functions? Because if they are both independent, can I make it two different functions? Go for Lambda. No, it has to be everything synchronous, only one. Go for EC2. Because your Lambda cannot run beyond 15 minutes. Okay, beyond 15 minutes, you can never increase the time. So this is always to run some short executions, short time executions, right? That's what we need to do. Every night I wanted to go and check whether I want to stop. Say for example, in your organization, you have created thousands of EC2 in your dev server, and they want to save cost. What they will do? They will go to CloudWatch, schedule an event. They will schedule saying at Friday evening 5 p.m. my time. Okay, you go and stop all the machines. They will write a Lambda function. They will trigger the Lambda function at evening 5 o'clock to stop all the machines. And Monday morning or Sunday night, Monday morning 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. it will automatically bring up all the machines. So your machine will be stopped for 2 or 3 days, right? Whenever it is holiday, it will be stopped so that you will not get charged. At least you will not get charged for not being used, right? So that is what the organizations follow, and they use a Lambda function to do all those things. Again, as I told you, the Lambda function can be written either in Java or in .NET or your Golang or Ruby, whatever you want. So whatever language that you are familiar with, you can go and write with that. Okay, a lot of use cases. If you go to the internet, you can find a lot of use cases, and you can take 1 or 2 use cases and you can try. It will be very interesting. Okay. So Lambda use cases in Python, Java, so many things are there. You can go and see. So many people would have written all these things, so you can go and check this and kind of go do all your this one, right? A lot of videos they would have shown you so many things, and you can go and just go and see how to use those things. There are a lot of use cases. You can take any use case you want, right? Just like we saw when somebody terminates or some auto scaling a system comes up, right? Suddenly in the middle of the night or maybe in the say late night or something, then you can get an email. Right? So you can go to machine learning. Machine learning uses this analytics, data science. Everybody uses this Lambda function. Okay, so you can go, and if you are really a programming pro, then you can go and if you really like programming, you can go and take a look at this. And if you are familiar with one of those 5 languages, it is more easy for you to write this. Right? Again, keep in mind, if you are writing your code in Python or in Node.js, correct? writing your code in Python or Node.js, the execution or the time that it takes to create the container is little bit faster than creating programs using .NET and Java, because .NET Java needs to import modules from Java, right? So specifically, if you say import, normally you what you used to say import java.io.star, right? They used to say java.io.star. When you say io.star, what you're trying to do, you're trying to import all the classes and the modules under IO, right? Input output package. You're trying to download that. That will really cause a lot of delay to start your container, start your Lambda container. So what you need to do, you need to be very specific, saying import java.io dot, then say maybe input reader, right? Or whatever is that you particular class that you wanted to import. You have to restrict that, but still there is a, if you see there's a comparable delay when you use Node.js Python against Java and other .NET code. Okay? So that you need to be very careful in that. Okay, so we have two more topics that we need to cover. So we have covered today till 11. We have till 13. So this is the 11th one. So we have tomorrow we will be covering on DynamoDB. Okay, DynamoDB and NoSQL database, DynamoDB, and then we will also talk about SNS and SQS, which is simple notification service and simple queue services. Okay, and we may go up to 2 hours tomorrow, so please be prepared and please join on time so we can start, because the Lambda, that's a DynamoDB, is again another one which is interesting, just like our Lambda, and it will take some time for me to show you on hands-on. Okay, so this is what we have, and with this, with tomorrow class we are done. So I would recommend you to go and download all the materials, and tomorrow at the end of the class we will see how to prepare for your exam and what are the different techniques that you can use and all those things, and you may need at least 1 or 2 weeks to get yourself ready for your interview should be okay. If you're already following with me with the hands-on, then you should be ready for your interview. If not, please go ahead and do. It will take 2 to 3 weeks for you to get used to all these services and hands-on, then you can start applying for your jobs. Okay, and once the class is over tomorrow, I'll be sharing an email to you all acknowledging that the course has been, you should acknowledge that course has been complete, and I'll also share you the link where you need to go and put the review of this course, trainer, and all those things. Okay, so please, only when you do all those things I will get paid, so please help me to get my payment on time. Okay,
Chandra, one thing, just want to check one thing. When you log in with IAM user, are you able to access all your details, account details also in there? Because I am seeing that I am getting the access denied one, so I'm not very sure whether the service gets.
no, are you saying here account?
Yes.
This one?
Yeah.
So what
When you are
permissions are you
logging with,
having? This is my IAM
I don't
user.
know.
Yeah. This is this the one you're not able to see?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, then go back to your IAM user. Before going to IAM user, go log in as your root user, get into that IAM user and see what permission has been set there for that
Okay.
IAM user. It should be administrator access.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So if you go to the IAM, I mean, first log in as your root account. Okay, we have our root account.
Okay.
Log in as IAM. So log into our root user. Go to the users and check for the user that you have created as IAM. Get inside the user. Go to the permissions tab and see whether you're having administrator access or not. If you're not having
Okay. Sure.
administrator access, then if you're having Amazon EC2 full access, you will be able to only create EC2.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I was
So
able to do it. I don't know why it got blocked like that. Yeah.
maybe you need to check again, and then if still you
Yeah.
face that issue, just go ahead and send out an email to the support group, and they will take a look and they will come back and enable it for you if something has gone wrong with your account.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so this is what you need to do. But for your billing and other things, please use your root account, right?
Root account,
And
yeah.
also for everybody, please keep a tab on your billing dashboard if you are all working on this. As I told you, free time doesn't mean everything is free. Still, there will be some charges for you. So you need to make sure if you want to stay with this account, you have to pay the amount, right? So just keep a tab on all the billing activities that we have, right? Please go ahead and see them, and you'll be able to see your billing dashboards and all those things. And if you want to see specific billing for specific month, then you can go and select the particular month. Say for example for September, right? September 1st to September 30 billing period. So nothing is there, right? Just because we just started. Now if I go back for the last month, August 1 to August 31, that's a billing cycle, billing period. My billing cycle is always third of every month, but the billing period is 1 to 31. So this is what I had paid, right? I paid like $14.16, right? So that's what I have paid. So like this, you need to go and always make sure you are there and go to orders and invoices and see if you're having any pending payments due. You will get a link here. If this is the invoice you will get, that is already you are paid. If you're not paid, it will be in payments due, and go ahead and pay it from there. Okay. So always keep a tab on your this one. And if you have not yet created a billing alarm that we create, I showed you how to create it. Please go ahead and create your billing alarm. So when it exceeds certain dollars, you will get notified through email. Okay, fine. Anything else, guys? And my only humble request is please download. The more you practice, the more confidence you will gain to complete your exam or do your work or pass your interview. If you are not working on this, right, the exam questions are always scenario based. They are never like straightforward asking what is Lambda. Nobody will ask you what is Lambda or what is this one, right? So let me quickly show you some sample question, right, just for you to see how it actually looks like in close to exam, right? Just give me a minute, I'll just show you something, and you don't have to let me know the answer, but if you guys can just think about that, that is fine, right? So let's just take this, right? So if you see here, right, so the questions will be like this only mostly, right? Say for example, let's take these two questions for now. I'm just posting it here, right? Hope you guys are able to see these questions, right? So it will be like this, right? You are requested to design a cluster of EC2 instances that will be used for high performance computing job. The instances should be deployed in close proximity and ensure low latency and high network throughput. What AWS features would help you to achieve this? So you have to select two answers in this, right? So you need to kind of make sure that you know this concepts, right? You should know what is IO optimized instance, then bandwidth, so some of the things, right? Then you need to know what is enhanced networking. We talked about placement group. So in this one, these two are the correct ones, but I'm just letting you know how those questions will come. See something on security group, right? What security group configuration is required for your Bastion host in VPC in order to allow SSH inbound access to Linux Bastion host from your IP address 192.168.32.5. So the answer, you need to find out what is that, right? So whenever you want to allow any single IP, as I told you, we need to have /32 represents single IP, because 32 minus 32 is 0, 2 to the power 0 is 1, that's a single IP. So this is the notation that we need to give, right? So like this only they will ask so many. This is very small. You can also go here, right? So you cannot connect via SSH. Some scenario is being here. They're asking you that you cannot. They're giving some scenario. Let's go and see this, right? I'll try to upload these questions also for you, just for your information. You cannot connect via SSH to your EC2 instance from your on-premise public internet IP 192. After checking the AWS VPC relevant route table and knuckle, they all seem to be correct. Everything is fine. Also, the instance has public IP address. The VPC has an internet gateway attached. What else would you check in the EC2 instance related configuration that could be the reason for this? What could be that? We should go and check that, right? Okay. Here we need to make sure this port is allowed specifically from this IP on 22, right? Ensure that the internet traffic gateway is not filtering. Internet gateway will never filter any traffic, so this is wrong. Change the instance type, doesn't matter whether you change it as T2 micro or T2 small. The issue is they cannot connect to the EC2. Public IP, they are saying the public IP is already attached. So the only answer should be this one, right? So like this, these are all scenario based. How will I know all these things? Only if I would have worked in security group, I should have been able to answer this type of questions, right? So this is how your exam or even your interview also happens, right? And there are, you see here, there are questions with like 6 lines, 7 lines and all, right? So it will kind of be a distractor for you. So if you're really confident you have worked on some hands-on, only then you will be able to see. Your application is primarily dependent on reserved and on-demand instance to handle normal traffic. The application is designed such that the job queue is available and a failed job is returned to the queue to be handled by another instance. You have a temporary high number of jobs that you would like to cost effectively. These are all some of the key things you need to keep in mind. Cost effectively process by adding additional instances. The additional instance will only be required for a short period of time. Short period of time, cost effective, and it is a temporary workload. Then we have to go for our spot instances, right? That's what we saw. So this is how you need to make some decisions on your this one. All this you need to do. You have 65 questions in 130 minutes. So you have two minutes per question. 2 minutes per question. So you need to read, understand the question, and go through all the 4 options that you have. All the 4 sometimes look similar, but you need to select the appropriate one. Okay. So this is how you need to tackle your exams, right? So you a lot of, I just gave some sample questions for EC2. I'll try to put that also for you guys, and you guys can take a look at this, right? Okay. So this is how normally your exams will look like, and tomorrow we will talk about like if there are any other course that you or any other place that you need to refer for your exams, right? That you can do. And you guys have any questions, please let me know even after we are done with the class. Don't worry, please ping me in the WhatsApp and just introduce yourself and say that you are from Besant 7 a.m. batch, and then ask your question. Then I will try to call you back if it is a weekend. If it's a weekdays, I will try to reach out to you based on my time. Okay. But I would recommend you guys to please download everything and start working. Otherwise, you will not get the full thing of what we have done. Okay. All right.
Chandra, one request for today's material, can you keep up to tomorrow? Because actually I am facing some internet issues. So
it will be there. It will be there. So it will be there.
Okay.
And today and tomorrow will be there. And I will give you a date time till Monday evening for you guys to download. And then after that, I will have to delete because I have to set up the other class.
Yeah. And Chandra, one more request that while sending these details like questions and these dummy questions like that, so is it possible for you to segregate based on the topics also, so that it will be easy for us also to how the questions comes from each topics?
Yeah. I have few for VPC, RDS, and
Yeah,
S3
important
and
topics maybe.
EC2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just put those
Yes.
core
Where
services there.
majorly.
Yeah, I'll put
Yeah.
those core services and I will upload that. So that will be like, it will be like this only, like it will say EC2 questions. Okay. So that could, all those
Yeah.
questions will be related to EC2.
Yes, correct. Because
So,
majorly question comes from those sections, so it will be easy for us also.
right. And I will also give you some reference to some sites, some blogs which are all very good, and they give you some key points what you need to know for your exam and all those things. It's mostly whatever we have done only, but just for you to kind of, before going to the exam, you can kind of take a look at that as well.
You can highlight the answers also if possible, because if we are not able to get the correct answer, it will be waste for us also.
If you see a hyphen here, that might be the answer.
Okay, got it.
If
Thanks,
you don't see
Chandra.
the hyphen, you have to answer and let me know which is the hyphen.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so that way we will test your knowledge also, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, sure.
fine. So
Thanks,
any other
Chandra.
yeah, thank you. Any other questions, guys, before we drop off? So my only humble request is please start working. The more you work, the more you get practice, the more you get confidence to schedule your exams or write your exams. Otherwise, if you pile up everything and then if you're under pressure, you are just have only 1 week to go and do everything, then it becomes very difficult. Okay. Okay. All right, guys. So we will meet tomorrow. So please join tomorrow, and tomorrow will be our last class. I will talk to the coordinator as well, and we will see. And if there is by any chance we meet in any other course like DevOps or Terraform or Python or something, we will meet again. But it again depends. I don't know which trainer you will be assigned to. So all the best for your exams and stuff. And if we are happen to meet again, then we will see in the next class. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
sure.
Great, guys. Yeah. Thanks everyone. Yeah. Thank you. We'll meet tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.